to which various ethnicities are overrepresented in the medical profession? It's exactly this. And it's fascinating. There's like, by the way, it's not what you expect, but the three top ones are overrepresented by a factor of 5 or 6x. So just being in a ethnic group that thinks being a doctor is really cool is massively important in determining who becomes a doctor.
I mean, and you're in a training group now, right? And I've been in training groups. Anyone's in a training group know there's some people who naturally need to be managed to train more, and some who manage to train less need to be managed to train less. But I've always found a training group to be incredibly motivating, right?
Yeah.
As a construct or any kind of like peer group like that. Do you expect to see a drop in talent levels with trend toward fragmentation of time from a very young age, i.e. kids in 30 extracurriculars? I don't, partly because, one, I think maybe they can do multiple things better now. So there are more chess grandmasters now than there used to be because of the availability of computer chess for study. So chess prodigies are more of them are becoming grandmasters younger and younger. At the same time, I actually don't think there's a trend toward fragmentation of time in sports. I think there's a trend toward hyper-specialization. And I think that happens to be, in many cases, it's sport-specific, but in many cases the opposite of what the sports science is saying is the path to success. So there's the occasional Tiger Woods, who the first implement he picks up is the one that he succeeds in, and that's an amazing story, although I think there's no evidence that that can sort of be forced. But I think the more typical pattern is the Roger Federer, whose parents, one of my colleagues described as pulley, not pushy, where he was doing a lot of different activities. And I think that's one of the reasons why the elites practice less at an early age. If this is a practice graph and it goes like this, and here are the eventual sub-elites, and it goes like this, and then the elites cross over. And there's some evidence, because of the way the data was gathered, you can't tell for sure, but there's some evidence that some of those people are going through what's called a sampling period, where they're trying a bunch of different things, finding what fits their mentality, what fits their physiology, before they focus in on it. And so I think actually we should try to preserve some of that early fragmentation. That's what I write about in the afterword of my book, so everyone should buy it. The new that's coming out later.
Following on that, I'm curious as well about whether you and I both ran competitively when we were younger. And my observation from age class running is that the success at age 13 is very, very, very loosely predictive of success at age 21, in large part because you have an incredible amount of burnout.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether the concept of burnout is something that we have underestimated in this kind of, that may be another factor in the dangers of hyperspecialization.
So. Actually, if you look at the tennis data, there's, I think, two things that burnout that you're talking about and something else you've written about are huge factors. Because if you look at like girls who are good at tennis early on, they will almost invariably, the best girls will almost invariably have quit while they're still teenagers. And I think it's one, burnout, and two, that they're just early physical developers. And so somebody sees them and says, wow, we've got something here. We need to push them to practice. And as soon as everybody else goes through puberty, they get caught and they're not used to losing, and then they quit. So I think it's a factor of two things that you've talked and or written about.
Yeah, yeah. I always wondered, it strikes me that the trend towards hyperspecialization has surely it has a perverse end, and that is to say that what you really want when you're trying to develop an elite core of athletes in any given group, you want to start with the largest pool imaginable of potential people. But what happens now, and that's easy to do if the expectation about what kind of effort is necessary for reasonable success is relatively modest or achievable. What happens with hyperspecialization is you start to diminish the pool at the outset. You realize that, if I want to be a real tennis player, I got to go to Florida to a tennis academy from the age of 7, and so you direct your child elsewhere, right? So it's perverse. I mean, after a certain point, wouldn't you expect our high-level achievement in certain athletic fields to start to get worse, not better, if this trend continues?
I do, yeah, and because I think more normal than the kind of Tiger story is the Steve Nash, who didn't own a basketball until he was 13, right, but was a very good soccer player. He was a kid. So I do, absolutely. I think our achievement will get worse if the trend continues.
I mean, it would be interesting to think about how you would optimize a national strategy for sports performance, keeping that in mind. I mean, for example, would it make sense then to ban certain kinds of national level sporting activities for kids below a certain age?
That's a great question. There was, I can't remember this girl's name, but a girl who's like one of the top youth players in hockey and tennis in the country. I saw her speak, and she said you should ban travel for girls her age, and she like is the top, you know. And so that's
My rule is that the travel to the sporting event should not exceed the duration of the sporting event. So if you keep that rule in mind,
that's going to be really bad for like the 100 meters, though, you know.
Yes, it would be really bad for the 100 meters.
But the point you bring up is actually one I just heard just in the UK, and people are really struggling with it, right? Because you want to delay that selection. The earlier you push selection, the more likely you include the wrong people, right? And so, but their problem is the sports are competing against one another. Like soccer doesn't care if they draw off someone who might be really good at basketball, right? They're willing to just buy everybody, and if one person turns into Lionel Messi. So the sports are competing against each other, and I think the model you have to develop is to keep those people who are not selected, who might be later matures or whatever they are, don't disadvantage them so much that they become like not viable for any sport later on.
Yeah. You can fix this. The Canadian fix to this is simply to have only one sport that people care about. Just one.
I think
that's it. Good.
Well, thank you,
I think we're out of time.
David.
Thank you.
A month ago. And at that conference in London, they talked about soccer development in England and what they're striving for. And some of the things shocked a lot of the people who attended. For example, in Ajax, which is AJAX, which is one of the top 5 soccer academies in the world in Holland, up to age 12, they spend 45% of the time doing other sports. Judo, gymnastics, other sports than soccer. What, 45% of the time? Now, in all fairness, these are academies that have double sessions. A lot of the programs here do not have double sessions. You only have one session in the afternoon, let's say what's happening now. Doesn't matter what the sport is. But you can see that emphasis on developing the athlete first before the sport. The better skier you are, the better racer you are. The better athlete you are, the better soccer player you are. So here's a major academy, one of the top 5. The Dutch produce an unusual number of world-class international soccer players for a small country. Their system is what Barcelona copied when they became #1 in the world. So think about that, 45%. Now, the program I work with in Philadelphia, we have, even though our MLS team, U18, U16, U14, about 65 boys, we just competed in the Generation Adidas Cup down in Dallas a couple of weeks ago against 3 European teams and 1 Mexican team, plus about 8 other MLS teams that qualified. We ended up there 5th. We didn't quite make the final 4. But we work on their physical abilities as well as their soccer skills. Now, this is after thousands of kids that try out in Philly area. There's over 300,000 kids that play soccer in the Philly area. So this is after tryout. And yet in our afternoon session, which is 90 minutes long, we'll spend 20 to 30 minutes in a weight room, not doing weights, with a gymnastics floor, with trampolines, and just doing ABC, agility, balance, coordination. And now we're beginning to see, after a year, we've only been in business a year, now we're beginning to see that when we were in Dallas and had to play 5 games in 7 days, the conditioning we had, the balance and agility we had, the recovery work we had really paid off. And so I urge parents here, when you look around for sports, and this whole debate between early specialization, or what they call hyper-specialization, versus playing multi-sports, try and maintain a multi-sport background as best you can. There are some exceptions, that's being said. There is sport-specific, gymnastics being the classic of starting early. Skiing, starting early in terms of getting balance and feel, and yet doing a lot of other sports. That's what the panel will talk about next. So that's one interesting statistic, is that some of these clubs now in Europe who are focused entirely on the #1 sport are spending 45% of their time. Another statistic that's out there are overuse syndrome. About 15 years ago, 10% of the injuries that showed up in youth in emergency wards or going to doctors was overuse. Now it's 70%. People who play one sport at a young age have 4 times greater chance of being injured than kids who play multiple sports. So keep that in mind in terms of what you do with your kids and how many you try and specialize at a young age. Remember, a lot goes on when they go through puberty. There are early developers, early matures, late matures, all the other issues. That's why for a lot of time we spent, Matt had at the UOP, long-term athlete development. We tried to educate coaches on that. We also know in this area now there's competition between the sports. Look, 15 years ago lacrosse didn't exist here. 10 years ago it didn't exist. Now they're getting tons of athletes, right? Hockey wasn't a big thing. Now we have a big facility. They're taking athletes. Now we have all the gravity games and all the other things in the parks. They're taking athletes from all the other more traditional sports. The sports here are competing against each other for athletes. It's not uncommon in here. I've heard stories from parents in this room that my son at 10 years old skis and swims. And yet when the swim coach found out that he was a ski racer, he dropped him from the A team down to the D team. He turned his back on him, literally walked away from him when he found out he was skiing. 10 years old? Have we lost our minds? We're competing for athletes. So one thing we're going to try and do in one of our next panels is we're going to try and get the directors of all the sports in Summit County to come together and kind of come up with some common agreement on how we're going to go after athletes. Because a lot of kids now are feeling pressure to specialize at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. Okay, so keep that. I thought that piece there was good. They talked about it. They give you some different angles on it. And I think that's very helpful. So we could have our panel up here. And instead, I actually prompted all of them. The first question I'll get to them is this. What did you do when you were young? How many sports did you play? And what role did your parents play? And today, if you have children, or we had a couple of parents in the audience too, what role are you playing currently with your children? Or if your son, like Ted Ligety, is very successful now, what role did you play earlier? So we'll just start on this end and go down there. Can everyone kind of give you a summary of their background and how they achieved their results, how they got to where they are.
Hi, my name is Derek Parra. I'm from the sport of speed skating, ice speed skating. I grew up playing baseball. And I came from that. It's kind of part of my culture, Mexican American. My dad, my brother, my cousins all played baseball. Did that for a number of years. So went from that into kind of running, just 5K, 10K races. My mother enjoyed running. She kind of probably influenced me going that direction. Got into wrestling in high school. And then I left California at a younger age, and I went to chase my dream of skating. I found skating on my own, roller skating on my own. And from roller skating, I went into ice speed skating at a later age when I was 26 years old. So definitely a late developer, but how my parents affected my journey, I was pretty good at baseball. I was an all-star all 4 years, but my dad was one of those parents who didn't have the time to spend with me to throw a ball, catch a ball, hit a ball, but he went to every game and yelled if I struck out off the pass or threw the ball to the right of the first baseman or something. So very hard on me. The second that I was able to get out of baseball, I got out of baseball. Went into running and enjoyed running, did some races, weekend races, 10K, 5K, stuff like that. Again, mainly because my mom did it. It was something I tried. I enjoyed running. I still ran as I trained through my career. But one day I went into wrestling. Well, wrestling, didn't like sucking down weight, but I liked wrestling. I was fit for it, good size, I guess. But when I got into roller skating, I developed a passion for roller skating, and that really changed the direction of my life. Got me out of my neighborhood into a better group of kids and parents who supported their kids in the sport. And then I did that for a number of years, climbed out of that sport, then moved away from home and chased ice skating. So my parents didn't so much direct me, but the parents of my teammates and the coaches that I was with really helped direct my life.
I'm Eric Hayden. Well, known for speed skating, but also now I'm in the middle of, being a parent, with kids, getting them involved with sports. On the back of this handout, I don't know if you guys have those, I listed the sports that I was involved in as a kid, and I'm sure I missed some of them. I was a swimmer, a diver, played tennis. My mom still plays a lot of tennis. Grew up playing ice hockey. Grew up in Wisconsin. That's a big time sport, especially if you're a high school kid. Was speed skating, played soccer up until college, played for, I think it was 3 years at the University of Wisconsin, so I have a letter jacket from the University of Wisconsin, played soccer. Ran cross country in high school. That was humbling, let me tell you. Clydesdale. And then did a lot of outdoor stuff growing up. Running around in the woods, building forts, playing with your friends, throwing firecrackers, all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of, sort of that play period, a lot of the things that we do nowadays are very structured. But I think as a kid growing up, we had a lot of time where we just kind of played and did what was available, whether it was throwing snowballs or what it might be. As far as my career as an athlete, speed skating, I was on the national team from age 16 to 21, and then decided I want to get into cycling. I then raced for the 7-Eleven cycling team, which was the first team to race in the Tour de France. I had a chance to race in the Tour of Italy. I was a pro champion in cycling in 1985, and then I got into medical school and went to Stanford Medical School, graduated from that about 20 years ago. I've been practicing orthopedics, and Finn mentioned this about these overuse injuries. I do sports medicine. I see a lot of people with overuse injuries. I can say when kids are coming in, at least half of them, it's overuse injuries. And when you talk with them, when was the last time you had a break? Well, it was, 3 years ago when, my parents took me somewhere. Otherwise, in this community, you see kids going from sport to sport to sport. Sometimes those sports even overlap for a period of time until it really becomes the true season for that sport. So see a lot of overuse injuries. And as far as parents go, I have to really attribute a lot of my success and also my sister's success to the support of my parents. Taking us to the facility so we could train the ice rink where I grew up skating at and spent a lot of my time was 75 miles away from home. So you can imagine, noon you jump in the car, some of these parents drive you to the rink, they spend the entire day there until 7, 8 o'clock at night when you're ready to come home. That's a lot of commitment and dedication for parents. So I think my parents were very instrumental. And then, as Derek was saying, after a while, I think they were good about kind of stepping aside and really letting the coaches take over and not being sort of those stage parents who were always, pushing, but really relied on having good coaching for success. So, thanks.
Okay, Cindy Sharp. I never did anything sports-wise. I swam in elementary school, but I was pretty bad. So, but my son, Ted Liggett, he races, and I think the main thing, as far as parents go, and I think what Eric and Derek were saying is when they get older, just back off, let them find their passion, and let them run with it, and not be hovering. So many parents that we see, all of us see, going to different events. Some parents are just so intense and just yelling and screaming at their kids. You missed this, you did that, blah blah blah. And, don't do that. Don't bug the coaches. Don't say, I want my kid to have a better start number. I want you to spend extra time with them. If the kids want extra time, let the kids handle it. Let them be individuals. Let them own their own sport. Don't be your passion or your dream. Let it be their dream. As far as multiple sports, I think it's good when they're young to do multiple sports and not be directing them. Let them direct themselves in what they want to do. And setting goals, I think the Park City Ski Team was very good on getting the kids to set goals and keeping a list of the goals and how they would achieve the goals and then following through to make sure that they actually accomplish them. And what Finn was saying is some kids develop later. Ted was a late bloomer. Some of the kids got on the U.S. ski team when they were 14, 15, 16 years old, and Ted didn't actually start racing with the U.S. ski team until he was 19. So some kids are late in developing. But I think the main thing is for Ted particularly, he's a driven kid, but he said that if you had pushed me I would have been out of there in no time. So don't push them. You let them direct themselves and find their passion, whatever it is, if it's swimming or skating or whatever it is.
Thanks. Here.
Hi, I'm Peter Jerome. I'm Jessica's dad, and I was a very mediocre hockey player when I was younger. And aside from that, I really, Jessica's a ski jumper, and I've never been on a ski jump in my life, which is probably why the kids were attracted to it. It was, other than driving the car to the ski jumps and working on the hill as a volunteer, I had no skill set in the sport. It was, yeah, I have four children. Moved to Park City in 1992 when Salt Lake was just trying to get the '98 Olympic bid. They had a very robust youth program up the Utah Olympic Park, and there were a lot of kids involved, a lot of Jessica's peers. 3 of my 4 children ski jumped in the program up at the park, and I think the reason Jessica stuck with it was because it was fun for her. There were a lot of her peers. I think percentage-wise, there were a lot of kids from the Park City community. It was a good thing to do. The ski jumps were brand new. It was fun, and she had some early success with it and stuck with it. And the other thing was, it was this. She tried other sports, or she played other sports, as did her brothers. But the ski jumping thing was something that we kind of did as a family. So it was, kind of kill 3 birds with 1 stone. You take the kids up to the jump hill, 3 out of the 4. That's a pretty good average. So I agree with what Cindy said. It just have to be there logistically and emotionally. But the kids I think will do best. They'll gravitate to what they do best at. And it's their passion. There's really there's no limit to what they will or won't do. It's totally up to them. I think my only, this was all Jessica's doing, but I would say that the best thing you could do for your son or daughter who's interested in really excelling in sport is just encourage their passion and let it be their thing.
Like you said, I started jumping at the park. When I was younger, I swam, I did gymnastics, I played soccer. When we moved to Park City, I started alpine skiing and snowboarding. Played soccer till about high school. I played softball a little bit as well, and then I would say I had to do Nordic Combined through the club, the Park City Club, and as soon as I was allowed to quit, I did, and I specialized in ski jumping from the time I was about 13 or 14. Kind of what my dad said, they didn't have any skill set in jumping. He grew up on the East Coast, and they were just supportive. I think they liked that they could take all 3 kids to the jump hill after school for 2 hours and not have to deal with us. But no, they were absolutely supportive. And when my brothers and I started going to competitions over in Colorado, one of my parents would usually drive over with us and sort of chaperone, I guess. So supportive and not too hands-on. But that was a good thing.
So my name is Mike Doliak, and I play basketball. I was fortunate to play at the University of Utah, 94 to 98. Had a lot of fun there. We made it to the Final Four my senior year, and then I played 10 seasons in the NBA. As far as my background in sports, I was a late bloomer as well. I didn't make our high school team. I got cut as a freshman, and then I was 6'1" as a freshman and 6'11" as a junior. So I did a lot of growing, and as you might imagine, I'm not very coordinated now. I was much less coordinated when I was growing. But as a late bloomer, I just went through that, and didn't really start playing serious basketball until my junior year in high school. And before that, as a kid, we played everything. I played soccer, I played volleyball, I played baseball. We did a lot. We lived in Alaska. My dad was in the military, so we did a lot of fishing and camping and hunting and hiking and skiing and did all kinds of stuff like that. And we didn't do them all at the same time though. I wasn't like, one season I would do volleyball, one year I would do something else. The only rule we had is once you started a season for a sport, you just had to finish that season. If you don't want to play again next year, cool, don't play. And I always had this vision in my mind. So I'm a parent, I have a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. And I always had this vision of, the excess of what's going on with parents, and we're not going to be like that. And this winter, we had Monday night was soccer, we had Tuesday was, Tuesday was off, Wednesday was gymnastics, hockey Thursday, Friday, skiing Saturday. What are we doing to our kids? This is ridiculous. And so exactly. And I think the thing that's important about athletics and sports, especially at a young age, is to learn some basic skills and have fun. And it doesn't need to happen more than once a week, honestly. I've watched my kids in ski lessons get so much better by going one time a week. And I think what's being lost is giving children the opportunity to go outside and make up their own rules of the game. We have right now, we're playing soccer, we're playing twice a week. They're 6 and 4. There's no need to play twice a week. We should play once a week on Saturday, and then the kids around the neighborhood should get together with a ball and go play street ball and figure out how to make up their own rules of the game and be creative and come up with things. I mean, that's when innovation is going to happen. That's what's going to progress the sport, is not having a coach constantly tell them, how to do it right, but let them learn some basic fundamentals and skills, and then go out and see what you can do with those basic things and see how much fun you can have. And, as far as being parents of athletes who excel, I think we all need to realize that half of us are going to be below average and half of us are going to be above average. It's just how it works, and we're not all going to be great athletes, and a lot of it's luck, and a lot of it is just kids who have maybe they have a special passion for it, or they have a talent for it. But I've seen plenty of people who work really hard to try and make it and don't. And I've seen plenty of people who are just better than everyone and they don't work at all. And so both of those things happen, and it's about loving your kids and making sure they're having fun and giving them a chance to go outside and play and make up their own rules, which I understand it's hard to do. We're trying to pull that back in ourselves, and I don't have all the answers for that.
Well, we've even tried, because our kids go to the same school, and we've even tried, we live just far enough apart for it to be a little scary, but to have them meet riding their bikes. So I think just the times have changed, but I do agree with you. I was a swimmer, and I've taken a lot of joy in hearing that a lot of people started in the swim world when they were younger. But I grew up in California, and I was born in '72, so I was a Title IX baby. And I actually had to go back and ask my mom this, why I didn't play soccer, and she said they didn't have soccer for girls when you were little. So I could have hopped on a boys' team, but she just never signed me up for it. So really my sport options were maybe a small gymnastics program or swimming. And everyone swam in California. It's called Summer Rec Swimming. Started in April, and my story was that I just loved it from the very beginning, and I loved it because that's what I was provided in my community, and because my older brother did it, and I thought he was the coolest guy in town. And it's really as simple as that. I was the kid that specialized because I loved it. I swam on the summer rec team until I was 6.5. Begged my mom to join the year-round team, and she waited for a while, and then I did it on my own, and my brother retired at the ripe old age of 10. So I was literally on my own at practice, and I think that, I tried a couple things. I tried water polo, which we had in high school back then, that I loved, and my coach was really supportive of it. My coach wanted me to run cross country, but I didn't sign up for it. I tried tennis, but I kept forgetting my shoes, and I'd show up in my flip-flops, and that didn't work. So I tried a few things, and I quit, and I tried cheerleading. I had, my legs were way too long, my feet were too big, it was not a pretty sight. It was like Doliac up there cheerleading. So I always was brought back to swimming, but I think I was so passionate about the way my parents were with my swimming career that I wrote a book after the Olympics in '92. So I wrote it in probably '97 and was published in '98. and it's called Champions Are Raised, Not Born. After the Olympics, I did a lot of autograph signings, and I just got this feeling that maybe parents had a different idea as to how I was pushed, or how I was raised, or how I wasn't pushed as a kid by my parents. And so I got about 9 other Olympic athletes and got some of their anecdotes of their parents, Bonnie Blair and Karch Karai and Debbie Thomas, if you remember her, the ice skater, figure skater. And so in the book, I just realized that we all have this inner passion. And I think maybe as a swimmer, if there are swimmer parents out there in the audience, it's a sport that's very unforgiving. You can't, go away for 6 days. You'll lose the feel for the water. Like all of a sudden you feel like you have spaghetti arms. And here you've been training for 8 months and you're away for 6 days and you feel different. But for me, my parents knew to stand back and just to cheer me on. They were there for support when needed. And I always say to people that the pizza party happened whether I had a good swim meet or I had a bad swim meet. It was never about how I did or my emotions at the time. It was about the family going and having a great time and enjoying it. So life didn't revolve around me, but they gave me such a strong foundation of who I was and what was important. And the other thing that my mom did, which was really cool, is she always said, because swimming is such a time-consuming sport, she felt the least that she could do was match my commitment. So that's really what she was there for. And I find that actually as a parent now, looking at my 2 kids down here, I feel like that's kind of the least I can do. That and fight for their free time is certainly match their commitment and make sure that they understand what's expected of them to really understand that commitment. But that's what my mom did. And then we can talk more later, but there we go.
My name's Eric. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, ski racer. And winter time in Buffalo was pretty easy. It was either play hockey or go skiing. And my parents both loved to ski. So for them, it was an easy choice. They love to ski, so why don't we bring our kids along with us and they can learn to ski and then we can all do what we love together. So luckily, my sister and I took to skiing early and started at a very early age, 2 years old. And it was very much a lifestyle sport that we could go up into the mountains. I say mountains, but really it was a couple times higher than the ceiling, were the hills that we got to ski in Buffalo. And a lot of it was night skiing. And from there, we got more serious about it, really started to take a liking to it. But it was really only 4 months a year. So we had 8 months besides our ski time to do other things. And very similar to the theory of sport sampling, that was my childhood. I started out just like a lot of people on the panel as a swimmer. I went out, in my mind, on top at 6 years old. I broke the 25-yard freestyle record and retired.
By the way, that's the first story he told me on our first date, too.
We had something in common. I knew that sport wasn't for me, but I tried it. And then I went into diving, which my mom pulled me out of because she was afraid that every time I went off the board, I almost hit it going into the water. So diving didn't really work out, but I played soccer, tons of grabbing friends and doing sandlot football. That was actually my favorite thing to do in the summer, was to get 10 or 15 guys go to the field and go play pickup football. And then I played soccer in high school. So there was tons of sports that that I played growing up. And as far as specialization, and now the kids, now skiers are going, hey, what camps can we go to? How many camps, how many days a year should we train in the off season? And I look back, and I was invited to a national team camp when I was 11 years old. I flew from Buffalo, New York to Portland by myself, transferred to Chicago, spent 10 days up in Oregon skiing in the summer and absolutely hated it. Flew back and I said, I'm not going to another summer camp again because I've really missed skateboarding and playing football. And so I didn't go to another summer camp again until I was 18 years old. So I really only skied 4 months a year. Besides that, I played sports. And we worked hard in high school at Burkmont Academy and played hard as well. But I'm a big believer in sports sampling and becoming the best athlete you can be and enjoying it along the way. As far as my parents, their role was very much like a lot of people on the panel talked about as well. They were very supportive. They came to as many races as they could, but they were never pushy. They just sat back and cheered us on, and I think they enjoyed the ride. But I never once felt any pressure from either one of my parents, and I appreciate that. I think they saw the intrinsic motivation that I had, and knew that they could just sit back and enjoy watching me have a passion for the sport of skiing, and I appreciate that from them.
Thanks, Eric. We've got a lot of good questions up here. Some of you answered a little bit of this. This one is, how did you finally decide which sport you would specialize in and at what age? Doesn't matter where we start, but how did you finally decide? Because almost everyone here played a wide variety of sports when they were young.
I'll start because mine's easy. I was just really tall. I wasn't any good at any other sports, and then I got tall. In basketball, a lot easier.
No, but Mike, let me just follow up on that a little bit because a lot of coaches now emphasize you got to touch the ball out, you got to have all these skills. How did you do? I mean, you started late. It sounds like you didn't make your high school team as a freshman. How did you develop the skills, the necessary skills?
Yeah, I honestly think you need some basic skills early. Like if you're going to be a skier, you need to be on the snow when you're a kid a little bit. And if you want to play basketball, you need to touch the ball a little bit. Like we knew how to do everything. We just played all the different sports around the neighborhood. We had football, a basketball, a soccer ball, a baseball, so I can throw and catch. I mean, I remember seeing some of my teammates at Utah, like they couldn't throw a baseball. What have you guys done your whole life? How can you not throw a baseball? And these guys are amazing basketball players. They can run up and down and do all this stuff. And you go to play tennis or something else, and they can't do it. So I mean, I didn't specialize till very late. I mean, my story is different. It's hard because my wife was a gymnast, so she was a gymnast since 2 years old, and that's really what she did. And but she had a passion for it, and I just had a passion for playing and competing and being involved in sports. It was funny. I tell this story sometimes, but when I got my scholarship to Utah, I didn't even know what a scholarship was. I hadn't started a high school game, and my dad. I had just finished growing. I was 6'11". My dad called a buddy of his he went to college with, and who knew Coach Majerus, to find out if I had any chance of playing some sort of college basketball at any level. And Majerus invited me out to the camp, and on the third day of camp, he offered me a scholarship. And I had no idea what that was. All I knew was that he said, "Hey, there's an early session if you want to come do early work." So I showed up. And we're going to play at dinner time, so if you want to play dinner time, you can. So I would show up. So I would do those things just because that's how I was raised. And I was here by myself, and I might as well go play some more. And I wound up getting a scholarship. So
Maybe a better question for you is, when did you know you could make it in NBA?
yeah, that hadn't occurred to me until Majerus pulled me aside after my sophomore year and asked me if I wanted to leave early. And I like leave right now? Where am I supposed to be going? And so and he was like, "No, go to the NBA." And I was like, "Well, no, I hadn't even thought of that." So that's when it first occurred to me that I might be good enough to play in the NBA. But I mean, yeah, I guess I was just, when I came to Utah, I was terrified because I'm like, I'm not good enough to play with these guys. Look at them. I mean, first day I showed up, Keith Van Horn, which he did to all kids who showed up as freshmen, we would go to the gym and he would just abuse the kids. So he takes me into the gym, we're playing one-on-one, he's just dunking on me and doing all this stuff. I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm not good enough to do this. So, I don't know, you just find a way, and if you are passionate about getting better, they'll happen. It doesn't have to be something where you're pushing at it at any particular sport your whole life, in my opinion.
How many sports or activities do you recommend? With so many choices in Park City, recommendations for kids that want to try everything?
I have two right here. We have two right here. I'd love to answer that one. I'd struggle with it, so I feel for all of us. And yet, such an incredible gift that we have opportunity. You know, my mom says to me all the time, she would have been such a great athlete if she had any kind of opportunity. Now we have a wealth of opportunity and we don't know what to do with it. I also struggle because I do feel like expectations are very high at a very young age. And if we could work together with the coaches and say, let's bring down practice frequency, then we could try a few other things. We try to stick to 2 sports, and our kids are young. They're 6 and 8. Can I talk about your gymnastics? So our daughter Sky is a gymnast. She's decided to take a break, she thinks, because she was just asked to go 4 days a week for 3.5 hours each time. And then the summertime, it was 4 hours. And I would only let her go 3 times a week because I was like, that's just too much. I mean, I really was authentic when I said I'd fight for my kids' free time. And I just know that there's just too much fun to be had at age 8. There's just way too much fun. I mean, thinking back what Mike said about the pickup games and the basketball hoops in the front yards, I would love to see more kids actually using them. If you think back to like Jordan, Michael Jordan, in his contract with the NBA, he made sure that he was allowed to play in pickup games because that's a huge part of his game, the creativity and just staying with it. And a lot of guys didn't have that because if you got injured at a pickup game, then your team was going to have to pay for you. So I struggle with it. I say one thing and I hope I follow through with it, but I think 2, and I think, you know, maybe twice a week for each of them for an hour. I don't know, but I don't know if any of us have the proper answer for that.
What we try to do is, one, expose cross-pollinate, like speed skaters play some hockey. If they come up to in my program, we'll have some speed skate training during the week, but we're also on our dry land days, we're doing something different. We're playing ultimate frisbee, we're playing kickball, we're playing baseball or something fun. We're getting on hockey skates and having them skate on hockey skates, just to expose them to different modalities of training or different types of sports. But for the young kids that come in, that's the ones I really try to gravitate towards. When they learn to speed skate, I just have fun with them. We might not even do anything related to speed skating. We're just having fun on skates, just so they can learn to have fun on skates. Again, like Mike was saying, you gotta be a kid and have fun. And so sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, "Are we playing frisbee today?" They don't even talk about speed skating or anything like that. Or, "Are we gonna play soccer? What's the game today?" You know, that kind of thing. And they'll get more motivated for the actual training activity if we have a fun game that they want to play at the end. And for me, growing up in a roller rink, that's where it was fun. Skated backwards, skated forward, went to session, went to all-night skates. We have an all-nighter, I call it a year-end bash, where we bring the kids in from all the programs, and we stay overnight. We told them to go, we shut all the lights out, and we have our glow sticks, and we have a midnight skate, and we show movies, and we play games, and then the next morning we race. This year we had the speed skaters do an artistic or a figure skating routine. Our figure skaters do a speed skating race. And the hockey players who couldn't come this year would normally have done something as well. But we try to just have fun with kids and expose them.
Go to a practice, just stand on the sideline and watch what the coach does, how it's organized, how much standing around there is, how much energy there is, how much fun are they having, even the amount of noise you hear. When you listen to that kind of a program, camping out overnight in the Oval, I mean, what an opportunity. So when you got to make a decision, we all want to go. When you make a decision, look at the program, do a little investigating, talk to parents who have kids in the program, and ask them some questions about what actually goes on in practice. Rate and parents' support or non-support of their kids.
It's their sport. If the parents are being too pushy or telling them how to do it or pushing them toward it.
Jessica, you said that you probably did it, one, because your father said no, but are the other women on the team that way too? I mean, is it a daredevil sport, or is it, if you lost, you see a lot of kids dropping out and jumping? It's a small field, but you see kids quitting?
Yeah, we have a huge program we call it the Small Hills program, and a lot of kids stop, I would say around 14, 15. We also lose a lot of kids to cross-country skiing because it's an NCAA sport, whereas jumping is not. I would say growing up, all the kids who stuck around after the age of 13, 14, everybody just loved to do it and had fun with it. And parents were involved at different levels across the board. You had that one parent that would show up at every practice and scream at the coach and scream at their kid. And I think that's why the coaches actually invited the parents to come out and try it one season. And I think my mom jumped the 20 meter or the 10 meter. And after that, she said, I will never try and coach you from the sideline again.
Any questions from the audience?
At what point does winning matter? Because as a parent, and I'm saying in particular to you, sir, with a daughter who I have a daughter who's a border cross racer, but your daughter's in a high-risk sport. So if she's coming 50th and 51st and last, but she still wants to knock herself off a 90-foot jump going 80 miles an hour. So I guess for me, as you think about progressing through sport, yeah, let them play, have fun, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 19, when risk factors start going way up, and the benefit of just participating in a sport at the highest levels or pursuing that goal, or if you've got lots of injuries and all kinds of things happening, at what point would you have, as a parent, tell other parents that, when you start balancing participation versus winning, because obviously you're all highly successful, you've won, you've been successful, but at some point there's a cost-benefit analysis that a parent has to go through where some kids really shouldn't be involved or whatever. So I'm just curious, in your own minds, at what point would you ever step in and talk to the child and say, or other parents or whoever, like, when does winning start to matter?
So then I think you have to have like a financial conversation. And maybe the goal isn't, winning like first place, but hey, do you want to put some parameters on here for your life? If you're not in the top 20 by the end of the year or a year and a half, I don't know what the situation would be, then, maybe you start thinking about other things, because I did love that about swimming. It wasn't always about winning. We had times. We had every pool was the same. You touch the wall, you look up, who won, your time. So you had lots of mini goals along the way that kept you excited about it. And what Mike said, it is pretty fun to have that goal to touch the wall first, or cross the line first. I like the fact that there's a winner and a second place and a 50th place. And you celebrate those and you learn how to lose respectfully.
Well, France, for example, in the soccer world, they don't do any ranking of the clubs up until the age of 15. Now, that doesn't mean that you play a series of games and one team wins all 10 and the other team loses all 10. Everyone kind of knows who's strong and who isn't. But they don't do a lot of ranking and they don't do all that. And a lot of countries in Europe, especially in the soccer world, where I spend a lot of time now, are de-emphasizing the winning. So they'll play a lot of drills with 6 goals. And the idea is just to score as many as you can because you got to be creative. If the goals are all around you, all over the field, then the decision making and creativity comes into it, and not just at the either end who won at the end of the day. The kids keep track, but it's the parents' emphasis on it that is where it gets distorted. And so they have competition. Yes, they have competitions. It's important to compete, and kids they enjoy it. That's probably the only reason why everyone stayed in it here, is they enjoy it. You hear that right near the end there. I want to touch the wall first. I want to be the fastest. I want on that roller rink. There's that competitive fire in you. But a lot of the NGBs are de-emphasizing in rankings at a young age, especially.
I find important because your question is, when does winning becomes important? It becomes important probably 14, 15, 16. But if you're in a good athletic program and the emphasis is not winning at a young age, you've had all that time to develop those skills. Because at some point, winning does become important because that's what you put all the time in. But I think as parents, you should ask coaches and programs, what's your philosophy at each age level? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to build an athlete? Are you trying to do a winning team? That kind of thing. I think that's where, coaches' education and understanding what's important at each age? What should you emphasize? Because Canadians are going to have revamped their whole sports system, long-term athlete development, and they have a system that starts at active start at young age. Then there's fundamentals. Then there's learn to train. Then there's train to train, and then there's train to compete, and then there's train to win. So they break it down at each age group, and inside of those age groups, what is important? Fun, fundamental skills, that sort of thing. So I think as parents, it's important that you're paying money to a program. What's your philosophy of that? Are you trying to develop an athlete? Are you trying to develop a 10-year-old that wins every game? But I do think at some point, competition is important. It's part of it. That's why you train 5 days a week at 15. I look at the ultimate goal is not to win, but to be successful at what you do. And I think part of success is winning. But if you look at the guys, I mean, the very best of the sports that we like to watch, you ask those guys after, say they win a game. Sometimes they're satisfied, but I'll tell you, the very best guys, they will critically analyze what they did, and a lot of them still, they want to go back out to the next day because they know they can do better. You know, the success for them is not just getting a W. It also means they want to play well. They want to be able to display their skills. They want to do something better than they've ever done before. I think what drives a lot of us is exploring, how good can we get at our sport? And even if Ted Ligety wins, what do you win, the GS, I'm sure his coaches at the end of that, and he and him sat down and said, what did you do well? More importantly, how could you get better? And that's what drives a lot of people at the very top. How can you get better? You might look at us and say, God, all these people up here are winners. But the question is, do I feel like I've been successful? Yeah, I won, but I also felt that I explored my abilities as a speed skater. I think I tried the best that I could, and there were days I come away with a world record or win an Olympic gold medal. But I always felt I could do better. I never thought I skated a perfect race, or I ever competed perfect, right? As a basketball player. Did you ever play the perfect game? Yes, Michael Jordan, did you ever play the perfect game? If he's honest, he's probably going to say no. That's why I came back after trying to play baseball. I wanted to play that perfect game.
Or that, at some point you have to just kind of let the coaches do it. What can the parents do to support their athlete, know that, however they do on the speed hill or in the pool or whatever, that is great, and effort is how do you motivate them to do their best, and how do you support them from the side?
So they were there for me. I knew that they cared about my sport, but having a little bit of a buffer zone I think was healthy for me. But everybody knows their children better than anybody else, and I think it's you've got to have there's something intuitive as a parent where you feel that. I think you're going to know if you're pushing your kid too hard, or if your child needs a little bit of a push.
I remember Jessica was saying is not saying, well, you could have done that better, or just let it go. Let them figure it out.
Letting them discover themselves, discover that passion for whatever sport they do have.